this is actually a pretty historic re-recording because we've not once in the 6 months of doing this podcast come back and needed to re-record an episode, but there's been actual modern updates here on our topic. So we wanted to do just that and come in and chat about the things happening in the tabletop role-playing game community.
Well, it's just some developing news that like should be addressed.
First, though, to warm us back up into the interviewee kind of vibes, why don't you
Absolutely.
first? I wanted to talk. It's pretty topical for me, but how do you feel about character death? When you're playing a character and that character dies, how does that sit with you? How does that resonate with you?
See, for me, like I generally make characters with very intentional ideas behind them. And some characters, they're meant to die. Like they are there because ultimately they're going to be a tragic character who will never make it past what they need in their character arc. So they will inevitably die on the way there. For a while, I was playing a round robin campaign. So each of us would take a turn DMing. We had like little, basically a hat. We'd pull out our species, our class, where we came from. All of that would just come out of a hat. So you never really knew who you were playing, what you're going to be until you made that character. And I absolutely loved that because I was playing with a bunch of people who, if a character died, they did everything in their power to, try and get out of it. And I'm very much someone who is willing to sit with that and just be like, wow, damn, they didn't make it. I had so much planned for them. But because I'm the person who has like 20 characters in the back waiting, it's always that, okay, this might stink right now, but it's an opportunity for someone else to be able to come out and be able to have their story told. Yeah, and that's why character death doesn't like hit me as hard, maybe. Like it definitely can. Don't get me wrong. I've had some, characters I've loved who've gone down, in seemingly random fights, seemingly no point for them to die here. And then suddenly they're dead. No one has any divine magic to revive them. And I'm like, well, that was them. That was it. I can't do anything about that now. Yeah, I just look at it always as a new opportunity to try out something else. If I really want them back, I, as a DM, will just throw them into another story at some point. And if it's because I'm attached to the stat block, then I'll do it that way. And I'll just be like, okay, well, I really liked what I was building with them. I'd like to see that executed still. So I'll just take the fully realized stat block and throw it onto some NPC that they'll meet eventually. Or, if I have an extensive character background for them, then that gives me so much more room to play and be like, okay, well, now, when they died here, who finds out about it? Who comes to try and avenge them? One of the characters that I'd been running for a very long time was Gareth de Nerat, who was supposed to be this big noble. He was an admiral who'd lost a war down in the south, and because of that, he ended up self-exiling to a prison colony, where he eventually pretty much took charge, got promoted after the old commander there died, and was coming back in. And through all that time, I had his entire family written out. His parents, his sister, his brother, his wife, who he'd left to go into exile, and all of her family, like how that all been connected in. So I was more than ready for him to go off into the sunset and be able to pick up with something else. And I think that is what's really important, is if you've been building a character up so much that you're really attached to them, you have people in their lives would be equally attached to them. So if you have that need for vengeance for your character, if you have that need to see their story finished out, you can always pick up a new player into the game and be able to have them do that based purely off of familial love or off of whatever bonds they've built over the years. And I think that's something that a lot of players, because they don't do as much background work, they're really just focused on that person in the moment who they represent. And that's why character death can be devastating at times, is because they haven't filled out the rest of the world for this character. It's really just that one moment that they have with them.
I think that's a great point. I mean, as like I as well have a fascination with just building characters. So when I come up with a character, I'll build it, and then it's in the books for the future, whatever that means.
It's in the archive, you know.
Exactly, whether that's an NPC as you've said, or the moments I do get to play, I'm like, ooh, this one I've been waiting on. It's this guy's turn. Um,
Hmm.
it I think I agree with especially the fact that the more that you fill out that character, the more it doesn't necessarily feel like that character's story is at a hard end. Right? Like if you filled out this world, then a relative or a connected NPC can come back in as your new character, and you can still continue some arc of this story. Maybe an arc of the story that interested you, but as the old character, you couldn't quite explore so deeply in some form or fashion, whatever that be. This is highly topical for me at the moment because in our actual like podcast recordings, we have
Hmm.
a character has recently died, and it was after direct. So they just finished the boss of their whole arc, and I was like, cool, here's like a fun side quest before you guys head home to do. And she died
In the side
in the
quest.
side quest, and in this, so we're playing Dungeon World, another tabletop role playing game,
Hmm.
2d6 system, and it has this scale that is like low ends of the 2d6 is not necessarily failure, you get to mark experience, but you don't get any of the bonuses. It usually is a
Hmm.
hard move for the DM to make things more troublesome.
Gotcha.
Middle range, there's a success with a trade-off, and then high range, you succeed. So for death
Hmm.
rolls, unlike in Dungeons and Dragons where you roll, 3 successes or 3 failures, there's so much opportunity for your team to
To be able to come and
fix
help
this
you.
problem. Yeah, and your team
Hmm.
knows, so everyone's acting. In Dungeon World, you get a single roll, one roll. On the high end, you're alive. On the middle end, you get an offering, a trade off, and he got the player Gabe got the middle end. And so his trade off, I knew his character, of course, so I made the trade off
Hmm.
interesting for the character. And it after I said it out loud, I was like, oh no, I have just killed this character. I know for a fact that in canon the character could not accept this trade-off. I know this, and what I've done is accidentally almost
Pushed his
forced him into
hand.
death.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's I
Yeah.
like it made the most sense, and still like since then I've been trying to think like what other thing could I have
What
done?
else you would have done? Yeah.
And I don't think that I would have done anything different. I think all of this tracked, all of it made sense. It's just a heavy situation. But he's doing the thing that we were talking about. It seems so far where we've been doing lots of character decision because all these characters I've built their entire class basically, using what
Gotcha.
they've told me. Um,
Hmm.
and so, where we're kind of landing is somewhere in that story, things that character kicked off that we wouldn't have ever come across or touched into if the character hadn't
Hmm.
been around, which is, we're continuing that flow in a different way. And that is
Yeah.
fun. But
And I
character
think it's
loss is hard.
important to, bring in still the characters that were affected by them, and have the world ask about their absence. I think that's a really important thing, especially for the player whose character died, is to know that their character still had an effect on the world. That there's still people out there who are going to mourn over their character when they find out about their death, because it can be very hard if like you're the only person who had a character die and the rest of the party kind of just glosses over it. You still need that moment to mourn, and I think that's something not everyone's necessarily familiar with. We've all experienced loss in different ways over the course of our life, and doing that in a group setting can be really hard at times. So you need to give them those opportunities. And that's really what incorporating stuff still from their background, from whatever their arcs and missions were going to be, like that work on the DM's part is super important just to keep continuity, but also to keep that player engaged.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. I think in just what you have said, I've been kind of inspired. I've been trying to figure out what the best like it all felt because it was at the end of a session. It was like it was all hard for us to like take in, and so like the end of it was all
Yeah.
very like, well, I guess that's it for today. We'll go our separate ways or whatever. And it's like,
Oh
we
no, that's
have to
always
like
so bad.
come back and now like live in this state that we
Hmm.
have created.
It's that awkward start of getting back. I'm like, well, I'm dead. What are we doing, guys?
Exactly, exactly. So, speaking of mourning, I think we as a tabletop role-playing community are going through a bit of that ourselves. Would you like to kick us off? Tell us a little bit about what's happened in. Maybe we'll start with the beginning of what's happened in the past 2
It's
weeks.
been a dark couple of weeks for everybody. So early in December, we can start there. Hasbro had its board member shareholder meeting, whatever it was, and the CEO of Wizard of the Coast spoke, saying that they're looking to further monetize D&D. They feel like it is under monetized. They're looking to get recurring payments into it, microtransactions, similar to what we already see with video games.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, not too long afterwards, they start sending out drafts. I'm going to put big air quotes around drafts here that get into the hands of some of the bigger creators that are around. And before too long, because those people were signed to NDAs, those leaks start coming out. And if you've read the leaks of the Open Game License 2.0, which is what we're trying to push out, it was very predatory. In not just for individual players and companies, but for the entire third-party publishing industry of TTRPGs. There was a hard cap of $750,000, and if you made more than that, not gross, just in general, a quarter of your profits would go to Wizards of the Coast. Your IP could be you could be told that you don't own it anymore, that you can't make anything more of it. They can reprint everything you've made thus far, and without your consent, without compensation, without any input on your hand. So you could lose everything because they decided they wanted to take it from you.
And they did all of this by requiring you, in order to use the Wizards of the Coast materials or systems in any form or fashion, to sign up for their, I mean, it's their website. It's D&D Beyond, right? But you had to like
somewhat. It comes down to agreeing to the new Open Game License. So we've been working with Open Game License 1.0A for the last 20 years. Like I could pull off like any of these books, and in the back here, there will be the Open Game License, because you are required to include it in your book. Now, do I remember where it is in this book? Yeah, here it is.
Yes.
Open Game License 1.0A. That's it.
Do I remember where it is? Yes.
Everywhere. Well, it's normally on like the back.
No, right.
But, they also have like advertising in here, so good for them. They're big. They can do
$1.3 billion in 2021. Good job, guys.
Well, like this applies to everyone and everything. Like I can pull out my Star Wars Saga Edition books, and it's in the back of here as well. Like these are things that have just been used forever because this is what the tabletop RPG community was founded on. Unless I can't find it, in which case I'll feel silly. I think it might just state it on here for this one, because this is a Wizards product, so they can kind of get around that.
Sure.
And it's not to say it's the only way that you can make games. There are games that are going to be completely unaffected by this, such as Call of Cthulhu, because they have their own system. I personally have moved over to Monty Cook Games' Cypher system. That's where I'm now building all my stuff in, because it has its own Open Game License and creator marketplace that I'm going to be pushing into. But the fear was that this was going to go out on January 12th. So in perspective, that was 3 days ago for us now. It was supposed to go out on January 12th, and it was going to be completely official. And if you didn't sign on with it, you couldn't publish anything.
Right. Because
they were changing it. They were revoking the original game license. And anything made after that had to be with 1.1 or 2.0, depending on who you talk to and what verbiage you're saying. And that's what really scared people, is because that would mean that everything that they've done in the past was now going to have to fall under that, because they were just getting rid of it. Originally, when the 1.0A was made, it was supposed to be irrevocable, but they never put that wording in. They said it was perpetual, which means that it was supposed to go on indefinitely. But because they didn't put irrevocable into the actual wording of the license, it meant that at any point in time,
They could.
okay, right now, it could theoretically be taken away from everybody. And if you've kept up on any of this drama, the original writers for the open game license have come forward stating that, this wasn't supposed to happen, that this was never what they intended when they were making it. It was supposed to allow for a creative marketplace for tabletop RPGs to, be able to flourish and to make things compatible with D&D, which was, the biggest one available, the one that most people are going to be, recognize. That way, new systems, new ideas could all flourish together. Tabletop RPGs were such a niche market for such a long time. Like, they've grown a lot, especially with 5th edition in the last 5 years. Like, really,
Yes.
the last 5 years has been incredible for such things. And because it's had so much more mainstream attention, it does not surprise me that this is the point where the big money grab comes in. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. This was a huge money grab by Hasbro, by Wizards of the Coast, not necessarily by the teams or by D&D Beyond or anything like that. And I want to make that very clear. The actual creatives that work there, that puts the time and the effort in to make things that we all get to enjoy, they're not the ones who are pushing for this.
Right, the artists,
from the leaks that I have seen, a lot of the Wizards of the Coast employees weren't even told about this, really, or about the rollout for it
It's
ahead of
seemingly
time.
more Hasbro focused and less Wizards focused,
Yes.
even though when you see it out there, it's a lot of blame falling on Wizards because they own D&D. And it's just we've gone up the ladder a little bit in terms of accountability, but we didn't go up high enough with all of our focus, because Wizards is really getting smashed. And while they are an arm of Hasbro, the general Wizards company is really not to blame.
Yes and no. So the general Wizards company, yes, it's still the management team of Wizards of the Coast that still falls under being, yes, Hasbro employees, quote unquote, but really they're still part of the people driving this and who are pushing for this. So because of that, they've had their hand in this the entire time.
I guess the reasons we love D&D, as you've said, the creative portions of it, the things that we've been inspired to do, I think still hold true with this company, even though their higher ups and execs are pushing for this obvious capitalistic push of money grab, which sucks, because it definitely you've just said, you've switched to focusing on building in a new system,
yeah, that's been a lot of work.
it's still it's still an unfortunate truth of it, in that playing in this system, you are supporting Hasbro or the arms that have made this decision.
So part of it, a lot of what I've seen for it so far has been the cancellation of D&D Beyond subscriptions, which is something I never used anyway, so I don't really feel one way or the other.
I wasn't subscribed.
Yes. And for me personally, I don't need a character creator. I'm very much somebody who will put my nose in the books, go through every option, try and find everything that I like, and put it all together on pen and paper, or on a document. You have the document for my goblin. I just went through and copied all that and got that together. But it really is going to be cutting down into the accessibility of the market because of what they're doing. No one who has played 5e and really gotten their footing into D&D through it is going to say that they now just hate Dungeons and Dragons, because that's not the point. The point is that we recognize what they've tried to do to the community, and we can't support that anymore. I'm still going to play stuff that I own. I was just invited to a Wild Beyond Witchlight campaign for a couple of my friends IRL, because they already own the books. And so they're like, well, I want to play it. I want to get people into it, but I can't give them any more money now. And that's really what it comes down to. I'm still gonna, you know, play a Descent into Avernus campaign on stream because I already own the book. We already have it purchased on Roll20 to be able to use the assets. So there's no reason not to go forward with that. It's just whenever I do it, wherever I do it, I will be having an open D&D, an open RPG logo up on my screen the entire time. I made a new command for it like immediately on my in my stream elements because this is something that really matters to me, that threatens a lot of the stuff that I've held dear growing up, that threatens a lot of the companies and the community that is sprouted up around it. You know, there are so many people who could lose their jobs, lose their livelihood, be able to take care of their families, themselves. You know, any number of things could be devastated if that had gone through, if it had worked the way that they wanted to do it. And you know, I understand there are certain companies that waited to speak about this because they wanted to have a concentrated response. They didn't want to just say, oh, this is bad. They wanted to say, hey, this is bad and we're doing something about it.
Yeah.
And that's why we're getting the Open RPG Creative License, or ORC, which I do love, from Piezo and Kobold Press and quite a few other companies that have all come together to say, hey, we absolutely do not approve of what's going on right now. Let's see. Chaosium, who does Call of Cthulhu, Green Ronin, Legendary Games, Rogue Genius Games, and they've left this open to as many people as possible to come in. And the thing about that is they're not going to be the ones owning the license. This is not going to be something where like, oh, Piezo started this, they're going to keep a hold of all this. No. They are currently giving it to the lawyers that they're using, Azora Law, who is going to be the one who actually owns it until some sort of nonprofit is set up, so along the lines of like the Linux or Linux Foundation, to hold on to this creative license to make sure that there's a safe harbor for creatives in the TTRPG space.
The Orc
for
Committee,
the future.
the Council of Orcs.
Mm-hmm. And everyone who's here, everyone who's going to be creating it, we're just the Orc Horde, you know?
Yeah. So the 1.1 leak basically threatened to split all sort of creation of using D&D into two, and that would be commercialized basically and non-commercialized, or I can't remember their exact words, but like basically when you have to register your game through them or whatever, they would, you know, if you ask or withhold any of your content due to a price barrier, you would be commercialized and be subject to all of their stuff. No matter what, they have basically the rights to your content once you register, but if you make money or have a payment barrier to entry at any point, you're commercialized, or whatever their term was for it. Or if you don't, sort of like you said, when we're streaming and creating this content just sort of live, that would fall into the non version of that. I think non-commercialized version of that
under fan content use.
Yes.
So fan content use was pretty much anything where like live D&D podcasts, anything along those lines where you're not actually producing your own material to be used independently of their products. You know, all we're doing is putting it into play, so to speak. It's not like we're verbatim putting it all out into the world for somebody to be like, oh, well, now I have everything I need to play D&D without ever buying a D&D book.
Right.
Like, it was very specific in how they put this together.
It was
to only cover like print and PDF versions of RPGs. Anything outside of that was going to fall outside of the license use, which is what's threatened a lot of the virtual tabletops that are out there, and why people were very concerned about that as well, because so many modules and adventures have been put out onto those spaces. Yeah, no, and video games too is the other part of it.
I mean, just so many different aspects of the gaming industry as a whole, and the even, you know, that side of the art industry, pretty affected by this 1.1/2.0 leak. Community outcry, everyone's upset. I really haven't even seen so many people being like, this is good, either people aren't talking or it is bad. There isn't really,
Yeah.
I haven't
No,
seen
there's
the other
no
side.
good.
I just like, I feel like they're always usually, like in these cases, there's usually another side. Like someone's like, I
Not
agree, but
here.
it just doesn't, like, I haven't seen that. No one is happy about, like, if you were to succeed and make $1 million on your D&D thing, now you don't. And like, now you've
No.
like huge,
And
huge
that's a whole
setbacks.
other side of it is like Kickstarters totally screwed by this.
Yes.
100% screwed by this because as soon as you hit that $750,000 threshold, you lose a quarter of that off the top.
Well, you
So there's
lose a
no point
quarter
even
of all
hitting that.
post 750. Either way, they're stealing your money.
No, it's at the 750. You lose a quarter of that from what I've
You
read.
at least in the 1.1 leak thing that I was reading, it specifically
Mhm.
stated that it was all profits post 750. Either way, it
Okay.
doesn't. It's a lot of money. Like if you're making $750,000, you're not making $760,000 at the end. You're making like $1 million,
No.
and that's like a quarter of anything past this. You now have a ceiling, basically.
And for a Kickstarter, that means the whatever funds that you raise past that are getting sapped from you
Yes,
immediately.
immediately. Not that it doesn't particularly matter when they and how they start stealing money. There is a limit, and there's stealing all the money after that.
Yep.
And that's like it's a huge 20 to 25% is a huge chunk.
That's
When you're
devastating.
talking almost $1 million, that's a huge amount of
Well,
money. And that's just
especially when
people
you're talking
at a
about like
Kickstarter level. That's like
startups.
people
Yeah.
donating straight to Hasbro. And that's not the point of
Hmm.
donating to a Kickstarter, so that 25% of my funds goes to Hasbro, who made over $1 billion in 2021. It's absolutely crazy. Like, you do not
Yeah, and that
need
was just off of D&D.
these fucking pittance. You don't need them from us. Why are you stealing them from us? So community outcry. No one's happy about it.
Huge.
So then I reached out to you and I was like, yo, we have to update this episode. Things are getting out of hand with
Yeah.
tabletop role-playing games. It affects so much more than just D&D. And then the day after that, they said, all right, here's our response. Have you read
Yes,
into their response?
I have read the D&D Beyond letter.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing that I laughed at was, yeah, here we go.
Pull that up for
You're
anyone
going to
hanging
hear
out.
people say that they won and we lost because making your voices heard forced us to change our plans. Those people will only be half right. They won and so did we. And I'm like, okay. If this was written by someone on the creative staff who's like, all right, hey, my game that I make didn't get absolutely ruined from this thing. Sure, you could buy
Right.
into that.
Right.
But anyone on the executive side who put that out there, like, oh my god, that is so delusional.
This whole letter, there's it. I heard the word and I've used it myself. Gaslighting going around with this letter, which it's
Oh,
filled
yes.
with it. It's like, we're on your side. We've always been on your side. It's not about money. It's about protecting you guys. You need us. It's so tongue-in-cheek that it's almost offensive at some point. I can highlight it here.
It's talking down to people.
However, it's clear from the reaction that we rolled a 1. Now's not the fucking time for a natural fail joke. You natural failures. Like, what are you talking about?
Like, ooh, whenever a business letter, because it's what this should have been.
Yes.
It tries to include lingo from the community, from the game. It just hurts. It doesn't. It's not cute. It's really just you're talking down to me.
You've made it clear in the past week that we are not in a community together. It is your community making money off of our community. So you coming in and pretending like it's anything other than that is like rude. We have built our fucking businesses and lives in this community under your foot. Seemingly, we didn't know we were under your foot until fucking a week ago.
You were standing on my neck, but
right?
Then you decided to tell me. So, thanks for that. And one of the other bits. So, what I will recommend for anyone who is really interested in this subject is to go to opendnd.games. That is the letter that I signed in protest. There's apparently about 60,000 people who have. They've got a number of articles in here, including one about revisionist wizards. and about the stuff that they've kind of gone back on and tried to cover up during this process. One of the big things that you'll hear and that you'll see is them talking about there was the 1.1 draft. None of this was going to be permanent. This was just a draft that was going out. And if you look at the leaks, they included contracts. Drafts don't have contracts attached to them. This was an official thing that was sent out.
Yep.
And that's one of the points that I know a lot of the bigger people who I follow and I pay attention to in the D&D sphere, which is no longer the case. It will just be the tabletop RPG sphere because pretty much everyone is distancing themselves from it. A lot of people are picking up Pathfinder. Pathfinder second edition is going off the shelves very quickly. There's big sales on that right now. I have friends IRL who've grabbed the books for them. And while I'm more familiar with Starfinder and 1.0 for Pathfinder, I'll probably be reading more into it and getting up to date on what they've been doing. The only reason I'll always go to bat for Pathfinder is because they have an Alchemist class built in. And I fucking love the Alchemist archetype. Call of Cthulhu has been another big one that's getting a lot of attention right now because it is free. As I said earlier, I'm going to be going to the Cypher system through Monty Cook Games, who, if you ever played the Numenera RPG, which was an actual console game that came out like 3-5 years ago, it uses that system. So that was actually my first introduction to it. I didn't even know it then. So that was kind of a fun thing for me to discover. It's like, oh, I already know this. I've played this stuff before. And it's very much more like a narrative focus on storytelling. But everyone is leaving, is what it comes down to. D&D's not going to die, but it's certainly not going to be making much money anymore.
We've been playing Dungeon World, so in Dungeons, Dragons, and Dice and the other podcasts we've been playing through Dungeon World because we've been playing D&D for quite some time, and I wanted to switch it up. And with the start of the podcast, I had kind of wanted to begin exploring other tabletop role-playing games, but since I hadn't gotten an opportunity to sort of DM in D&D, and by that point it will have been probably over 2 years because our next arc, like the person who wanted to do it claimed that they wanted to do D&D, and they still are because they've been putting in a lot of planning and effort. Of course, nothing will be for sale. It's all exactly like it's built around what we want. It's using some of like old 4E books anyway. Like anything he's pulling is from like the older stuff. And so we're doing our very best to like, make sure that that's not for, gonna be for sale or any sort of things. We're definitely not going to be promoting it while we're playing it. We're just going to be playing it as we do. But my next one was I was thinking about making D&D, but now I think we're going to lean more heavily into the exploration, and that is probably every season. Like this will be our last D&D live season because
centric.
There's no point. I have it in my dreams to make a TTRPG at some point in my life, and now I have to do my very best to keep it out of their license realm and in this other, new orc, so that things like it's wild. It's wild to have to switch up so much of what the community is doing and focused upon in their almost livelihoods. Well, in their livelihoods in many cases. I said almost to specify myself. In order to like adapt to the situation in gaming. Like this is us playing games for what should be for fun. Some of us to make a livelihood, but like in the end, it's gaming. It's playing games.
Yeah,
I'd imagine to relax for the most part.
Tell stories together. That's all it is at the end of the day. It's telling stories with some dice and a sheet of paper that tells you how good you are at some stuff.
And we enjoyed the dice version of D&D, but if this is how it goes, I can roll dice in another fat form to make the same things happen.
Absolutely. Like that's probably the most incredulous part of this. Like for everyone at home who's just like an individual, a game master who makes their own little bits of homebrew and preps their own adventures and whatnot, this doesn't really affect them the way that Hasbro thinks it's going to. All this tells them is, cool, I got the books. I pirated 90% of them anyways. Now I'm just going to, go do my own thing. Thanks. I can write my own stuff. I have a pencil and a brain. Apparently you don't have that.
And I read all your books already, idiots. I have all that content up here now. Take them away from me. I don't care.
No, like I do love having a physical book, but
Yeah.
I will never buy another D&D book is what it comes down to, as long as what they're doing continues. And like I said, it mostly affects accessibility, because when you have that book there, you can just hand it off to a new player and be like, here, go, read, enjoy. Find something that looks cool to you, and we can make something for you.
My
And
roommate, much
it's a
like
lot harder
you,
to
has
do.
the full bookcase of D&D books. He just got a new bookcase for Christmas, bookshelf for Christmas, so we put it up, and now it's filled with the D&D books. But he even said he loves buying them physically, but he said the only way that he'll be buying them physically now is at like a half price books, where all of the profits goes to half price and not to only if he finds them, and not like as a new copy anymore. And this is a person that pre-ordered some, I think, like especially some of the most recent ones that have come out. I don't necessarily know if it was pre-order, but it got them pretty fast, like Tasha's Cauldron and a lot of the recent ones. But no more, no mas.
Yeah,
you've soiled it.
It's just, it comes down to a moral standpoint, really. Is, you can still do it if you really want to. You don't have to be conscious of what goes on in the rest of the world, how this is going to affect other people. If all you play is D&D, sure. But most of us aren't quite that narrow-minded or focused in along those lines. Either we play D&D as a pastime, and you get a book every once in a while when you find it, out in the wild, and you actually care to pick it up, or you're invested enough in it where you were picking up the books all the time because you wanted the new lore, you wanted the new archetypes, everything that goes along with it, and you know enough to be worried about this. It's really hard to find a line in the middle where you're an active creator who isn't going to rally against what is being done here, because you have empathy. Like, it's really that simple. You just have empathy for other people and how this is going to affect them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much bigger, I think, than it seemed initially. It's just it's so wide reaching, and I am pleased that some of these other companies have come out actually pretty quickly, I would say, to post their stance in the draw their line in the sand, I think is what I mean to say. That's it. Like, that's the line, and that is one that the rest of us won't be crossing.
Won't cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that never in our history will we watch one of them cross it again, but that's to say that, like, I mean, that gives you a large group of role-playing games to focus upon. If your big worry about switching, like, tons of people are like, oh, I'll just switch, I'll throw everything away I've done. Like, you don't need to do that. That's the best part, is that you can keep your storylines, you can keep everything going, and like, if you wanted to be as intense as you could actually just switch systems and like rebuild your characters up to where they're at in this new system. You might have different spells, you might have different things. You could also just play it because you're doing it on your own. You're not making money from it.
I think the funniest part, like for me personally, is anyone who's playing 5e could switch back to like 3.5 if they really felt like it. And you'd have way more options, way more to get into. And I assure you, you can find every one of those books online in PDF format. You just have to go looking for it. But they're there. And you won't be giving a dime to anyone else. Wizards isn't producing those books anymore, so you can go out and find those at used bookstores. Whenever I'm out at like a Bookman's or Half Price Books or something, I always find D&D books there. I just happen to normally have them like 95% of the time. The only thing I don't really have is like Dark Sun stuff.
But I'm looking for it.
But well, I wouldn't be opposed if it showed up.
Right.
If I could get some Dark Sun stuff. I love my Thrycreen, you know. But no, there's plenty of ways to adapt what you're doing to something else. Part of the reason I picked up Cypher was because it's so simple. It's so straightforward. Like, it takes some GM work, to adapt everything over. But ultimately, super simple. Very much you can build whatever you want in there, and it'll be able to function. If you want to keep the essence of the other stuff you're doing, then all you do is go, well, this is the game I want to play. I'm taking everything from 5e, and now it's just going to be in here. Okay, all right, cool. We'll wing it a little bit. when don't we wing it as GMs? We prep stuff, yeah, but half the time we're just coming up with things as we go. It's nothing new in that regard. It's just a little extra effort.
Yeah.
And if you love it, if you've been here telling your own stories, then you're gonna do it. It's just gonna take a little bit of time.
I mean, that's really, I think that's really all it boils down to, is that, like, I mean, once we get on this flow in a year, this may not be as much of a problem anymore. D&D will be a thing of the past a second time, and we'll be onto the future of every other RPG game. And that's where the content will be being made, and it will be more easily accessible in the same ways that I think you access your D&D content. It's just going to take creators a small amount of time to switch over in like how they're focusing. I've already seen like I follow quite a few like just random D&D idea posters on you know the various social spheres, and I've already seen them switching to like rather than their hashtag D&D 5e or D&D whatever, it's hashtag PF2e now, and I'm like, all right, Pathfinder, I'll check it out. I'll check it out. Yeah, it just requires a little bit of work and like time, but we'll get there, I think, as a community, because we're all seemingly focused in the same place of making this right for all of ourselves, and taking it into our own hands. So yeah, a little bit of time goes by, and I think that we'll be back on a track. It'll take some time to pick up the pieces, but I think we can pick them up.
100% we can. These are a bunch of creative people who care about what they do. And we have the tools already available to us to switch.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it comes down to. If anything, the most impressive feat to come from this is somehow Hasbro has gotten everybody to finally check out different RPGs.
Maybe that was their goal all along. They'll come out with another letter. They'll be like, this was the point, guys. I wanted to foster all of your desires in all these other games. This was the point. Gaslight.
The market of tabletop RPGs. It's that way there are more viable competitors, and we just have the best game out there.
We wanted everyone to roll a 20 on this one.
God damn it, they say that. They say that that'll hurt.
I know. I know. I'm curious to see how their sales charts plummet this year, opposed to like the past couple years, or like how that's affected. You know, I'm gonna guess plummet at a pretty drastic rate based on their D&D sales overall. But
well, so okay, the thing right now is, since they've not released the OGL 2.0, they're really just going to wait for this to blow over and for people to not be thinking about it, and then they'll push forward with whatever they're going to do. Maybe to a lesser extent, maybe some of the wording will be changed, but because there is no, from what they've said, there's no idea that they're going to maintain 1.0A. Like, whatever they do is still going to be bad. And they're just going to try and let the media cycle, the short attention span that people have, blow it right past them. If everyone who cares about this changes to a different system, they'll just do it without people paying as much attention to it. It's still a very dangerous time, and awareness is going to be hugely important in the coming months, in the coming year. There'll definitely be a lot of interest around this. So with the Orc coming out, and that those sorts of companies who were using the original open game license will likely continue to shed some light on this as time goes. But it's a big possibility for burnout on the subject, and for them to be waiting for that point before they do push forward with it. Because anyone who's still stuck there, they're going to be screwed over. Like, a Critical Role is probably one of the groups I'm most worried about out of this. When they did put out a statement, it was rather neutral on this, and it's because D&D Beyond is one of their biggest sponsors. They're backed into a corner because of what they've been doing, what they've been working with for so long, that this sort of a drastic shift is really going to hurt them. It's the same thing with like Larian Game Studios, who is making the Baldur's Gate 3 game. They've had to have, and presumably they have their own license allowing them to do that, which will not be affected by this. But they can't go on the record or go as in support of the new game license that are going out. They can't openly decry it because if they did, they are going to ruin themselves financially and potentially get into further lawsuits. Like there's all sorts of danger around this, that even though we have stopped this round of it, we have to be ready for the future of where this fight is going to go.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to maintain position, maintain hold, and keep an eye out, because just because things like, they came out and they said, oops, we messed up, they didn't say like, and here's how we'll fix it, and here's what we will do and what is happening. Instead, they've just said, oops, we've messed up. Oops, you've noticed we've messed up, and we will gaslight you. And so
we're gonna
it's important to
try and cover it up.
continue to watch, and some of the resources that we've shared, open D&D, I mean, it's important to go through, I think, and actually like read through what Wizards has said about these things. Definitely check out their, that leak, check out their apology letter or whatever, to be knowledgeable about what they're saying.
Yeah, there's also some screenshots from Wizards of the Coast employees who contacted some of the major people who've been pushing back against this, who did so anonymously because this is just they've seen what they've heard. You can also go check for that stuff to understand how like even the people making this are being left in the dark about what's going on, because this isn't something coming from them. Like it's scummy.
It is.
And that's what it comes down to.
It is. And shocking that it happened, all of this, in 2 weeks since we did our recording, since we like set up and did our thing. Like, I guess maybe 13 days ago or something like that, something wild. And then everything kicked off.
Recent. Yeah.
And then everything got out of hand.
We recorded on the 2nd. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been 13 days.
Yeah. It's just wild how fast time flies. 1 and 2, like, I don't know, the purpose, right? The joys of the podcast are like how we find joy about these things in our lives, and we definitely did that in recording 1. I've just never had something so like hugely topical to the episode actually happen around when we're doing these episodes. So I thought it was really important to come back and like talk about that. I mean, it's important to the whole topic of the episode, and we talked already about our joys in this thing. I'm curious about how the first recording would have been colored, had today been that recording day.
Just come through, yeah.
Right.
And
I'm just curious.
What I can say about it is it doesn't change the joy of the storytelling, right? The interactive experience with people that it just brings about that little bit of bittersweet, that melancholy of being like, yeah, that's my uncle. I loved him since I was a kid. We grew up together. He told me a bunch of funny stories, taught me a few things. He's kind of racist, so I don't like
him anymore. But when I was younger, I didn't understand that.
But I've grown to realize what that means, and I don't really want to support that anymore. And that's kind of what this has become with Wizards of the Coast and D&D. Yeah, that's my capitalist uncle who's gonna try and extort me for every penny I have. It's my scumbag dad, maybe. I've been seeing these YouTube shorts for scumbag dad, which are absolutely terrible. All great storytelling, but it's just doing like scum of the earth stuff, and I've been very amused. But that's kind of what it feels like here. Is like, oh yeah, fuck you.
Oh man, it's effective and wide-reaching consequences for sure. Yeah, I'm curious about, I don't think any of our other favorites will have huge changes to what we're doing. Like playing Dungeon World, it's not like their book is going to update. It's not like the flow of playing that is going to change. It's not like if you're playing Pathfinder, anything is going to change there. It's not like our next season of D&D is changing in any form or fashion, because it's, it doesn't need to. It's just more we need to be on a societal focus on this thing, right? We need to make sure that we're not providing fuel to the flames for them to continue to make these wildly catastrophic decisions.
And yeah, anyone who is interested in doing such things, you can pull the Open D&D logo off of their site, throw it on up with whenever you're doing things like that. I think that's what's really important is, just being knowledgeable, being informed about, what is going on around you. Of course, we can still play D&D, and we all will to one extent or another. But just being able to tell people, to be like, hey, I'm glad you're enjoying this. This is what's happening. If you care about this because you like what I'm doing right now, go support this. Go check this out. We'll be doing other things in the future. This is just what's happening in our industry, in our community at the moment, and we need your help.
And that's the thing that this boils all down to, and tying it even back into the podcast, is that our joys are often centric around a community that is built around us doing this thing. And quite often it's like we find more joy based, like the more communal exchange we have on our joy.
Yeah.
This is just a way for you to continue to support that community that has given you so much over your life. Given us so much. Indeed. I cannot believe that we're doing a second update on this thing, but it's so topical right now. It's so important to the community and to the episode that we talked about, and the content we talked about.
Debatably, we've had as many updates as D&D has actually put out for this. So
it's very true. That's very true. So yes, last time we talked about how they were talking about doing this new version that was going to put a lot of sort of barricades in place and mess up a lot of different parts of the community. What has happened since then?
Well, the big news, and because I want to preface this, they say that they are not going to move forward with an update to the open game license, that 1.0A will stand. It will stay, will become irrevocable. No one will touch that. There's no actual guarantee of that. That is just what they're saying right now. That could change. The actual big thing coming out of this is that they've moved the entire D&D 5.1 source reference document into the Creative Commons, which is a license that allows everyone to use it on equal footing. I've only skimmed through to check what's all in there, but it is much more expansive than what they'd originally been talking about. It includes races and classes and spells, things that they originally were saying were wholly D&D. Now, for the meme lords out there, this included a page about, mythical versions of Norse and Egyptian Celtic gods. So people were already kind of poking fun at that sort of, legal claimants that they were trying to make. But moving it all under Creative Commons really does free up the TTRPG space to feel safer, at least when going forward and making their stuff, without having to worry about anything being changed on them suddenly. And it should be the case. It's really a fingers crossed thing.
Fingers crossed.
It should be the case that we can just continue to use the current open game license for ever, with any luck.
Right.
It's just, they've decided to make this power move right before the D&D movie was coming out, which they kind of realized was a bad call if they're going to upset their entire fan base before their big movie that they want to succeed goes. And then you also have Baldur's Gate 3 that's finally releasing this year, which is going to be another big release for them. And that's why I think we're safe for this year. I don't know if we're really safe forever.
Or maybe 5e might be off their radar for now, because they have one, they have one D&D coming soon. So
and that is why,
yeah, right, exactly. So, give up 5e. Here you go. You guys love this one, but here's this new one. And I don't know, none of the basically, they came out and said, we hear you, we'll back off, and here's 5th edition as a consolation we feel bad, here's 5th edition, and that's okay. Like, I mean, hey, I'll take it. Now we have 5th edition. But
they might try to introduce things into 1D&D to radically shift the way that we play to a point where there's no playing D&D without using stuff from that. I think that really will be a goal of theirs, because if they do introduce a new licensing method with D&D 1, D&D 60, whatever we're actually going to settle on calling it, that could be a major sticking point for many people moving forward who are like, well, I wanted to do something, but it's too close to what they have with 1D&D, and now I can't. Otherwise, they're going to come after me because it's under a different license, and anything published with that material has to be under that license. And that's really the power that they have as a company, is that they can still decide to, put something in place. Because I don't expect D&D 1 to be out until the end of this year at the earliest, if not into 2024, just through the playtesting phases and dealing with the backlash that they're hanging their hat on right now, really, by trying to come back with this.
It's wild. It's just an absolute roller coaster. I will say that at no point did I, as a consumer, expect them to back down from this. I fully expected them to ride that one into the grave. And so when I woke up to that, tweet from Wizards of the Coast, I was like, okay, that is something. That is something. But I think what's important to note is that D&D as a whole has been thrust into the limelight in the past 20 years. It's always been it's been a game much longer than that, but it's been massively gaining in popularity in the past 20 years. And when this occurred, there were using Pathfinder for example, they sold out of almost a year of stock in 2 weeks for their source books, their core rule set.
Incredible.
Absolutely incredible for them. That's awesome. Go them. So what they've done and what many other third-party role-playing games have done is increase the stock purchases for this year to account for people switching off of D&D for this thing, because many people said that they were never going back to D&D again. That felt always caveated, if this goes through, I won't go back to D&D again. But
yes,
as this comes through, I think it's still important to remember that they did attempt to pull this. It doesn't take now D&D off my table as much as it was going to, but it does definitely has solidified my drive to explore many other role-playing games.
And I think that is what a lot of people are experiencing right now, is they won't feel guilt if they go and play D&D with their friends now. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this, but by doing so, I'm promoting something that is negative for not just me, but for my community. It's much more that, okay, well, if people decide to play that, that's fine. That's that's what they know. That's okay. I just, I've had my trust broken with them. I can't go back to being a consumer from that company without seeing actual long-term reparations and safety steps put into place. Pathfinder, Piezo, Chaosium, Green Ronin, they're all still going forward with the the Orc license instead, because they realize that this needs to be a safety net that is included. That way this can't be pulled again to the same degree. That way the market itself has those fallbacks to go back onto, so that way the consumers can feel safer about supporting people without worrying about them suddenly having their license pulled or something crazy like that. And I think none of us expected this to happen right now. I know that a lot of older D&D players will tell you when Hasbro acquired Wizards of the Coast, they always kind of thought this sort of thing would happen. I've had a chance to talk to my dad about this in between our talks, and that was definitely something he pushed with the discussion, was that's just how Hasbro is. That's how they are as a company, and this is something that he's been expecting for over a decade, really.
No, I mean that tracks. It wasn't it wasn't always Hasbro's, and Hasbro is just massive, multi-million-dollar corporation. So like anything they can do to continue doing that, as we've seen with, historical evidence of corporations like that, they will do. So this isn't entirely shocking that they did this. I think I'm more shocked that they took it back for now. That's what I'm more surprised
Honestly,
about.
yeah. The Creative Commons is a huge victory on everyone who was pushing for it. Like the one D&D message, the open D&D message, like all of that it brought this out is honestly incredible, because it is 403 pages that has gone into the Creative Commons license. Because I do have it pulled up. I don't know. They did say they were going to try and make it more accessible sooner than later, but I have not gone through to check that. I'm pretty sure it is just the complete 5e player's handbook.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah.
Items, artifacts, stat blocks for monsters. There's a lot in here, and I think including the Planescape, which is important for me, because I was trying to figure out what I was going to rename the whole Planescape to. But yeah, I think a lot of creators, obviously, they were very afraid what they were going to do with this, because, whether you're just a content creator who streams, live streams playing with your group, you normally support third-party publishers with that. It's not something where you go straight through D&D every time. Sure, you may play a D&D campaign, but inevitably, you've got artists commissioning you, or the artist commission that you're putting out. You've got, other additional rule sets that you're using, and anything else that your players decide to bring to the table. And so there's definitely a sense of serenity that I think everyone's trying to accept, because this has been a long and grueling process of just trying to keep the momentum going, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. D&D Shorts has put out a phenomenal amount of information to broadcast and keep people on the same page with what they're hearing from people inside the company who are trying to get that information out to the public without jeopardizing their jobs. Like, there's just been so much charged emotions that have gone into this, that I think we all want to celebrate, and I think that this is the time to celebrate. It's just, if you're a cynic, in the back of your head that this isn't the end.
Yeah.
And as much as I want to be an optimist, when it comes to capital, when it comes to how capital operates, that they're the ones who want to write the history of it, which we've already seen during these arguments. The whole idea that it was a draft that got released, which we talked about in our last update, how that was just flatly not true.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to go back. I think that's how a lot of people feel right now, is it's hard to go back to the golden days, so to speak.
I mean,
before they tried to pull this.
I'm just not as... Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to go back when you have your trust broken, and it's wild that they're having this conversation about a tabletop role-playing game, because this, like, it's like such a deeper conversation in many other aspects, but it applies here that, like, it just doesn't like feel the same after your trust has been broken. Even like earning it back, the relationship is on a new level, and this has done just that. Like, basically what it's caused for, like you said, like we have the other podcast as well, and it has caused basically all plans for D&D based content to be scrapped, save the one campaign in D&D that does fit into an exploratory look into many role-playing games. You know what I mean? It makes sense to include it, I think, in that group for us. But like I had been planning another D&D campaign post that one, because I just have like good nostalgic feelings about it, and I kind of like enjoy playing it. And so I had been planning one, but that has been scrapped, and I've already been like enough thought into what is coming next rather than that idea, that I think I'm just stronger for it, because I put more thought into it now. Like, it just it feels like a betrayal almost, and we can be friends, but we're not really like together anymore, D&D.
Don't call me. Give me like a month at least. Then maybe send a text. We can get some coffee.
I
I'll have
might
some
pirate
pleasant
your
months.
movie. Don't expect me to come see it in the
That's
theaters.
still a good possibility, yeah.
But hey, I'll miss you by then.
No.
Give us some time, you know?
Honestly, like that is what it's gonna be. Is the distance will make the heart grow fonder, because the heart is not fond at all right now. And when you go back to it, you will still enjoy playing it, because you enjoy the concepts of tabletop RPGs and the specific mythos that D&D has around it. I'm still rereading my old War of the Spider Queen books right now. That this all happening has not diminished any of that for me. If anything, while reading that, I'm just like, man, I hate this so much. I love these books. I've loved this lore for so long. And the only reason I'm upset with it is because of the, capital overlords who are trying to make a buck off of us. Like that's what it comes down to. I think for a majority of tabletop RPG players, they already go into this to trying to escape the capitalist hellscape that we all endure on a daily basis. So to have it thrust into it so heavily because of what's going on in the real world, it just kind of taints the escapism to a good degree.
Mm-hmm.
And finding other systems who want to support and want to grow the community because they actually care about the community and not just the dollars coming from them. That is a big factor of it, but it will start to relax. Once we're not all on edge because we think we are being attacked, we can actually go back to just enjoying what we do instead of being stuck in that moral quandary of I want to play this, but if I play this, am I supporting something bad? Which you can you'll see with other games already. I know there's the Hogwarts Legacy game coming out. I'm never going to play that. That is completely off the table for me because it gives money to J.K. Rowling, and I've seen what she does with that money, and I've seen who she is, and I can't support that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with what they have walked back from the updated 1.1 that was gonna steal people's money and IPs and so much terrible stuff.
What a wild thing to pitch. Like, hey, we probably won't get this through a starting place though, right? Everyone's got to start somewhere, and you're like, what the fuck? That's why we're so mad, is because that's like not even a starting place for progress.
Yeah, no, seriously, it was mind-blowingly stupid what they tried to throw out there. I always find it funny when the company knows that their people meticulously read through the books to figure out what's rules as written versus rules as intended, and yet they don't expect us to do the same thing when they try to upset the status quo. Like, who did they think they were pulling this over on? That's my question. Who do they think wasn't gonna read this and just go, okay, yeah, I'll accept that? Because no business worth their salt.
This is the rule reading. This is the rule reading community. What are you talking about?
Like, literally.
We love crunching the numbers on it.
You gave me a 400-page book to start with. You didn't expect me to read the 15-page license you put out?
Yeah, I don't know. I think overall I feel like I am in a better place with role-playing games. I'm always going to miss the nostalgia of the like total grasp I think that D&D kind of had on my heart for role-playing games, but I am so excited. Like every time I get deeper into learning about a different role-playing game and the setting and the moral and the drive and the roles and the mechanics, I just get so much more excited and thinking like, oh, how can I use that for my machinations? And yeah, I think overall it's inspired me in a way that is going to be better for me creating stories in these places. Because I can still I can make it high fantasy. I can use elves all I want. I can, do these things, but now we have different mechanics. Sort of like I've ripped Dungeon World into space. Like we just play where we want and use the mechanics that give us the most joy.
Absolutely. And I think that's always been the case with D&D. They just don't always realize it. Like that is how we got stuff, like I'm even losing name for it. I'm just thinking Starfinder because that's what ISO did was, Pathfinder in space. But that's always been the case is people just go, oh, well, I really like this, but I wanted to do that. I'm going to make it that.
I'm going to make it do that.
And we absolutely can still do this. I think a lot of people just been inspired, like yourself, like myself, to go out and find other systems, to get new ideas and how we want to engage with it. And, I think one of the fun parts for me was looking at new systems, going like, oh my God, I've been making something similar to that. I can't believe someone's already executed this. I like how they've done it. Let me try with that first. Let me see if I still want to tweak it back to what I was doing with it. And that just little rules exploration is a ton of fun for the GMs. I know for some players, it can be a little bit harder just because they may not be as book oriented. And that is always something that you have to look at as a GM is when you're like, okay, I'm reinventing the wheel here. Who's going to read it though? And as long as you can, bring things to them succinctly, you can give them the resources and help them through it and be able to, remind them as everyone's learning it together, then it's not a problem. That's what this has brought more than anything. Just new tools to the table, new places to go and find joy. And it's what I'm excited for this next year.
I'm excited for that as well. I have so many different like RPG books now on the stack that I'm like gonna start cracking open and digging through. I read the like foreword on Blades in the Dark and got so friggin' excited. I was like, ooh, this is awesome. The things that they're gonna be able to do with this. So like I'm already like over the moon with just like new ideas. It's not even really like the negative of the loss. It's just like positive of what's in front of me now. So, well, I think that is really all we need here on this tertiary update of our episode.
If we have to do another one of these, I will be shocked.
Who knows? If they want to pull some wild rabbit out of the hat, it might be worth it in the future. We can do one like 6 months down the line when they're like, haha, we tricked you. We didn't include irrevocable or whatever.
I really hope not.
Right. They're like, oh no, we misspelled creative. It's not the Creative Commons. It belongs to us still, idiots. And we're like, oh, cool. Yeah, we can update that whenever, they pull that. But I think this is good for now. Perfect. Well, I think that covers a good response on the modern happenings of tabletop role-playing games.
No, I think that's fair. So just in closing here, Em, I have a question for you.
Oh yeah.
Where are you looking to find your joy in storytelling, in tabletop RPGs in this coming year?
Oh boy.
Since I did the ending question for the original podcast, you get to do it for this one.
I guess that's true. In this coming year, okay. I feel a little bit cloudy about I'm very excited about the character I've built for the upcoming D&D thing. I'm very excited to attempt to draw our current campaign to a close in using a new character and a new branch of that storyline. The one that we've chosen, the biggest negative to it was in the past we've done something kind of similar to this, and the response from the players themselves didn't seem to go as well. But it wasn't my choice then. It's not my choice now. So I've definitely made that known. And I think that they're more open to something. And this is much more story-based. Before it was just like, this is a cop. And you're like, I don't want to be on a team with a cop. And so that went bad. And now I think that story-wise, it could go well. And I'm interested to see how that goes. My biggest thing now creatively for this year is finding the next system that I'm going to use. I'm going to be exploring all these systems. Call of Cthulhu has been on my list for a while. Pathfinder's on there now. I think I was adverse to it before because it seemed a bit more complicated.
It is.
Exactly.
More complicated.
Exactly.
I won't deny that.
So it's looking for what can kind of facilitate my love of like fantasy. That's a huge of it is like the fantasy take. But also just like, I think using these things to begin crafting the base of what I think maybe my future role-playing game could be. That's a huge reason of all this research as well, is like finding what I need, in it, finding what I
Hmm.
want, what makes it unique. I'm very excited to begin to do all of that. It's a very like scatterbrained ADHD answer to something I'm looking forward to, but this year creatively, I'm very excited. I think that in the tabletop role playing space specifically is
Hmm.
going to be a good year for at least our bubble in building in new stories and exploring new ways of going about that.
Yeah, you're gonna find new systems, be able to fall in love with new things, be able to test them out. I do know a Call of Cthulhu GM, so if you want, I could get in contact with them. Maybe they want to run a session. I know that they've also been weighing in a lot in the OGL stuff, so we could definitely look into that. Whatever games you do run into, we could also do another follow-up bit at some point, just talking about all the different things we found over the course of the year and being able to share that. Because I think sharing new games is going to be a huge part of the upcoming year, is everyone getting excited about new things together and
Yeah,
being able to geek out in that in respect, and
definitely.
that'll bring the community a lot closer, I think.
Definitely. Uh, yeah, yeah. What about you in this coming year? What are you most creatively looking forward to?
My plan was to get published this year, so I'm still absolutely going to be pushing towards that, figuring out everything that I need to do,
Like
and
homebrew
just
content?
figuring out a new system. Yep. On Drive Through RPG, the Cipher system has their own like creator portal and whatnot that you can push through. So I'll be looking at that,
That's
pushing more
incredible.
into
Yeah.
that, and like even if I'll likely have my own like print copy of what I do at first, and then I will scale back whatever I need to take out to make it go in with theirs. But I'm really excited to be able to say I have my own book ready to go,
That's really
if
exciting.
only to be able to share my little view on how a fantasy world should be put together, and to be able to get to share that with more people,
Yeah.
because it's always been something I've enjoyed, and it's always something that's been on like my list of things to do. This isn't the RPG system I wanted to put out necessarily. I had put a lot of work into that at one point, and as I talked about in the main podcast, that's kind of all been scrapped because I don't talk to those people anymore. So this is really the start where I want to be able to say that I am a tabletop RPG publisher.
I'm a
I
creator in
am
this community.
I have a stance in this community. My voice isn't just that of some disparate GM. I'm not just the one guy in my friend group who's like, yeah, I'll run a game. It's no, I will run a game, but I want to let other people be able to run this game too. And that's a sense of pride, sense of joy. I'm really excited about it. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how long it's going to take before I'm there, but it's going to happen this year. So that's the huge thing for me at this point, is my resolve about this has just been solidified.
That's fantastic. I think that I think that I agree with that overall. Is that yes, I'm sort of downtrodden about the seemingly loss we're experiencing in this community right now. But it solidified other decisions in me, being to continue searching into other, tabletop role-playing games, and to widen my joy about this whole topic